Welcome to Body Kindness. Learn and grow.
This is a special podcast series where we help anyone just getting started with body kindness.
We're reflecting on how we have evolved since our earliest episodes. I'm Rebecca Scritchfield.
And I'm Bernie Salazar. Let's get ready to spiral up together.
Hey, Bernie, what's up?
Becca, I'm excited about this one. I'm just going to jump right in. So this episode this Learn and Grow is about the Biggest Loser study and the effects biologically that it had on contestants. At the time of this letter, you kind of sprung it on me. You had sent me a text saying, hey, had you seen this study and did you know about it? And I remember thinking, like, what are you talking about? And what exactly is this study? So, yeah, we come to find out that what?
Well, so I think I first saw it come across in the New York Times because the New York Times did a piece on the research study. You know, I mean, research is notoriously boring to read and difficult to read. Like even, I mean, so we, through my training, through school, you have to learn how to read and interpret research and you study statistics. And I don't have a PhD. I'm sure it's even harder at the PhD level, but even, at a master's level. And I still read research very frequently in my day-to-day life now, but it's like, you get the gist and the abstract, and you maybe, if you're really interested, click through, try to look at some charts and try to, look at the conclusion. But there's I heard a stat somewhere that maybe like only 11% of a research paper gets read, or 11% of research papers out there get read. So part of what I believe this caught my attention because I saw it in the New York Times first. And I can't even express what it felt like, as somebody who can read and interpret research, but to see it written in layman terms in the New York Times, and then to go back and find the study. And we were literally 1 or 2 days away from our planned recording. And I was like, we're not going to do that. We're just going to talk about the outcomes. And you had zero heads up. I don't even know if you even read the New York Times article.
Not at all.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
No. So I was learning about it as you were sharing it. My feelings, as our listeners will soon discover, were those of being in complete shock and loss as to what to say. But it's been a couple years now, so I definitely have some thoughts and opinions on both the study and how it's affected my life, being aware of that study. So I'd like to encourage our listeners to go on, tune into this episode, hear it through, and come back to hear about how the information shared in this study has actually played out in my life for real.
You're listening to A Good Start by Montplaisir and the American Dream soundtrack, courtesy of freemusicarchive.org. Listeners, this is an important episode because Bernie and I talk about one of the longest studies on weight cycling and dieting. This is a study that followed the Biggest Loser contestants from season 8 for 6 years. I helped Bernie understand the outcomes of the journal article that was published and the layman article that he read that was in the New York Times. And I help him figure out how he can make peace with his experiences and move forward with body kindness instead of dieting. And it's really interesting because you hear us talk about it in the first conversation, and then in our reflection, keep in mind that this is now over 2 years later, where he's talking about how he has learned and grown since then. And it's pretty remarkable. A heads up, in the episode, Bernie discusses his temporary weight loss and excessive efforts that he put on The Biggest Loser. So take care of yourself when deciding to listen. My hope is that you'll find our collective anger feel like a solve to the wounds of chronic dieting and body shame that is all too familiar. If you're ready for more, why not start with the Body Kindness book? It's available wherever books are sold in print, ebook, and most recently audiobook. Also, I have a free e-course you can download and get started with it right away. That's at bodykindnessbook.com/start. So when you sign up for that, you'll get some tools that you might find helpful in breaking up with dieting, some self-reflection work, as well as ways that you can track things that might be important to you instead of calorie counting and whatever, how many miles you're busting through. So you can decide if those resources are helpful for you or not, but they are free to you anytime. I check in with you over email for about a month. And we also have a Facebook group. So you can search Body Kindness Insiders, and that's a place where we talk about the podcast episodes. And I've also got a virtual book club going on there. And it's a community where people who are working together to help each other break free from dieting and practice body kindness. Enjoy the show. Today, I would say, Bernie, we have a lot to talk about. Just to start us off somewhere, where were you when you heard about this Biggest Loser study?
I actually was, to be very honest, at home on my couch, and I received a text from a certain someone by the name of Rebecca Scritchfield. I had no clue what was happening. And it's interesting. This is how, for our listeners out there, this is how Rebecca's mind works, and I love it. She said, check this out, and did you know about this? Like right away, you wanted to know, how could I have held this back? That's kind of how I read the message. And I just chuckled and I said, literally, I had no freaking clue.
Well, now you do.
Now I do.
You
yes.
And everyone else in the world. So I was minding my own business, trying to crank out some book, like kind of manuscript revisions and on a tight deadline. And because I cannot completely close out my email as much as I try, I was just headline skimming and I get New York Times alerts. And so the alert was right in there and hooked me right with the subject line, after the Biggest Loser, their bodies fought to regain weight. And I can't even tell you the mixed emotions. Like, first of all, I was like, whoa, I instantly thought of you. But I actually got very excited. I didn't know, anytime there's something that might hint at size diversity or, the dieting's not the answer, I get excited. And then usually I get, oh, wait, there's going to be some horrible things in the article that are going to make me less excited. But I really couldn't wait to read what the article was. And I knew that there was going to be lots of attention. And it seems just like in general, I mean, when I asked you to do the podcast with me, I really didn't have hardly any intention of talking about The Biggest Loser, except for just that if people might remember you from it. And we talked a little bit about it just so people understood your experience. But I just feel compelled that now we got to talk about it even more, because this is something that was shared widely. And it's a big story when other news outlets cover the original coverage. So it didn't just show up in the New York Times, but it showed up in medical news. It showed up on NPR, and many other places. Bloggers, former contestants it's a brawl between the contestants.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's funny you say that, because first of all, you had told me about it. I read the article, and then I am a serious, and I mentioned it before, I think briefly on our podcast, a serious NPR listener. And I've always wanted to be on NPR. So I was like, oh, if ever I had a chance, this would have been it. But
you should pitch them.
What, NPR, if you're out there and you're listening, I got a lot of things to say, and I absolutely love your what you guys put out in the world. But beside that, yes, Rebecca, I know that you went towards excitement, especially when it goes to actually looking what dieting or crash dieting or losing weight in such a short time span does to someone. But to be honest, and I'm going to be very open, I just don't know what to think. I'm hurt. I am happy to almost feel like I didn't fail. I think what the Times article lacked was a true sense of what this does to you, on an emotional and mental level. I know that post-show I worked incredibly hard and just wasn't able to get a grasp on this. And I shared with Rebecca many a time that I felt like I just kind of slowly started fading into my own little world to escape, on some level, a sense of failure, but also a lot of our viewers out there who are fantastic people. But and I think it said it somewhere in the article, but whether you think they're judging you or not, or that whether they are or aren't, you feel that they are. And I'm just truly floored at the article myself, and I don't know what to think. So I'm glad that you're here, Rebecca. Let's go ahead and just unpack this, because this is something that I think is going to have a huge effect on a lot of people, not just Biggest Losers.
Yeah. Well, what was interesting to me is the parallels that I could draw between your loser letter. And I mean, I had no idea. Did you even know this study was being conducted?
No, listen, I had no clue. And It's so interesting that you say this. Like, the timing is crazy for us, because listeners, I know we sound just incredibly put together, but Rebecca and I worked very hard, at least, 24 hours before we put a show on, more like 2 or 3, to really talk about what it is that we're going to share with you guys. But the Biggest Loser letter came out. It was something that I felt just looking at a finale, and I hadn't seen a finale for a while. And the whole reason why I was watching it was for this very podcast, to be honest. And I literally get emotional, and it is happy for these people's experience of feeling a sense of pride, and I got through something, but then right away I was just inundated with this sadness, and then this feeling to warn, or to give advice to, or to just reach out, because I know what the years afterward look like. I mean, I was season 5, so they're on season 17, 16. I really don't even know, but I know there was little to no research really, or follow-up done for us. If we're talking season 8, they followed,
for 6 years. They followed them for 6 years. That's huge in the research world. I mean, studies are few and far between as it is. It's a funding issue. But, there's like, we did an 8-week program. People lost weight. Woo! And people get excited about that. A 2-year follow-up is like miraculous. 6 years is really meaningful. 6 years is really meaningful because that it shows the potential for weight cycling, which is basically part of what's going on here. But what I found interesting about, and kind of like your 2 reactions. So you talked about the loser letter. In there, you were basically, it was great advice, and, they can hear the whole thing by listening to the other podcast, so I won't repeat it. But you were basically talking about, you need to get yourself back into what your life is going to be and figure out what that is. But you had this really special line, and it was like, basically said, do you really want to worry about every calorie that ever crosses your mouth? Are you really going to exercise as crazy as you did on the show? And those aren't your words, but that's what I got from it. And you were telling people to really stop and reflect and try to figure out whether it's working with helping professionals, the people that you care about the most, but you got to figure out something that is going to be sustainable and work for you. And that's great advice. But even when you wrote that, you still carried this blame of failure 100% on yourself. 100% on yourself. There was nothing in there that talked about biology or find your true, healthy, happy self. I think that you mean those things, but there was nothing that was literal from your mouth saying that it's not just you. And so when you react to this article, from whatever you were able to glean from it, and just so everyone knows, we have not had any side conversations about it. So I'm just figuring out what he's read and what he knows, and I'm going to share what I know from, what I garner. I actually read the actual study. But it's like, I don't blame you for being happy or maybe relieved or like, wait a minute. I unnecessary? Go ahead.
No. I mean, first of all, let me go ahead and address the letter and the fact that there wasn't anything alluding to G or to the other points that you had made. Yes, I had an idea that could be a possibility because I live with it day out. But when you're out there living your day-to-day life and surrounded by people who have maybe seen the show or just friends and family, loved ones who had seen your transformation and then seen you creep back, they don't want to hear that. Society doesn't want to hear it's about your biology. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we could put that out there, but at the end of the day, you're still being or judged or sometimes attacked on social media for having put it back on. And yeah, we can say it's the biology, this or that, but it doesn't. People don't really care.
Right. Well, that's why.
I mean.
No, you're right. I mean, that's why research is needed, which is why this is so significant. But even with this research, there were still failures in what the scientists, frankly, when you look at the study, their conclusions don't make it look like they learned any lessons from their own research because they still say things in there. I mean, it's not verbatim quotes, but the bottom line is they still say things in there like, oh, well, all's not hopeless because what they do, like the Biggest Loser methods, the weight loss is still better than other weight loss methods out there. And I'm like, what? How could you even draw that conclusion? Or their big call to action is like, we have got to fight the reason why the metabolisms are suppressed. We've got to figure out a way to give these people leptin, and so they still don't get it. They're not learning from their research. And that is upsetting. And I think just like you said, it's because deep down, society doesn't want to hear or talk about the existence of fat people. There's been fat people around forever, way before our food systems change. And I'm not saying yes, there's tons of factors, but the bottom line is there is size diversity. You cannot deny it. And the two key things from this study following the Biggest Loser folks for 6 years was that basically when they left the show, metabolism was low. Now, as you lose weight, it takes less calories to keep you alive. So your metabolism does slow down. But even though you're working out a lot, and I believe there's a piece of data that shows that a lot of fat was lost, but not that much muscle was built. And I think that's because of how low calorie you guys were. But at the end of the show, the metabolism was slower. But this is what confounded the researchers. As contestants regained weight, metabolism did not increase proportionately. So somebody of that same body size, the expected metabolism is higher in someone who never did the weight loss in the first place. Do you get what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, no, I totally get the study. So what does that mean? What does that mean, Rebecca? Break that down. We're saying somebody literally who is, and I was listening, of course, this is from NPR, and
mm-hmm.
They were talking about somebody who's 150 pounds and another person who got down to 150 pounds.
Mm-hmm.
Their RMR is not going to be the same.
Right. And you burn fewer calories, and it's significant calories. It's in the range of 500 to 800. So was in the New York Times, Danny, his was the highest discrepancy between someone of his size, what they should be burning, and what he actually burns. There's a difference of 800 calories a day. That's a lunch. So basically, to prevent him from regaining weight, he has to cut out lunch every day.
Oh,
and,
my gosh.
And some contestants, it's 500 calories lower metabolism. What scientists expect is as a person gains weight, your metabolism increases. It's supposed to require more calories to keep you alive. So the bottom line meaning of this study is that the problem is the diet in the first place. We'll get more into that. But the other interesting thing was leptin. And leptin is a hormone that basically says, hey, I'm full, I'm satisfied. It suppresses hunger. Think of it like that way. The opposing hormone is ghrelin, which is called the grow hormone. Ghrelin is higher to tell you, hey, I'm hungry. Leptin is higher and ghrelin is lower. And leptin says, I'm full, I'm satisfied. So after The Biggest Loser, the leptin was practically non-existent, was not there. They expected that because of starvation. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how many times had we talked about that? We had given presentations a long time ago, and I literally would say to you, I can never feel satisfied. We even had a conversation, if you listen back to our podcast, about how I could never find the perfect hamburger.
Yeah.
I mean, just different. I never, ever, ever felt satisfied. I shared with you this feeling of numbness, and I think that at a certain point, Danny Cahill in the season 8 group celebrated their 6 years. I'm on close to 8. I think we just did 8 or 9. Yeah, so 8. And after a certain point of just living with this and not knowing what this is, you just get kind of numb. And I go back and forth. For our listeners out there, I go back and forth because we're so conditioned in our weight loss experience to take on that individual responsibility. So I go back and forth, and I don't know what to think. Okay, well, here's a study done. It's supposed to be showing why weight, we gain it back. And then I thinking to myself, well, have I been serious about my workouts? Have I really been diligent about my eating? I mean, anybody who talks to me is going to be like, what side does this guy stand on? And that's what I kind of feel left in this really whirlwind of like, I don't know what to think. I know what I've been living with. So am I going to take this information and not necessarily justify, but take this information and unpack it to see how it can help or how it can move forward knowing these things? I definitely don't see this as an excuse. You had kind of mentioned, Rebecca, maybe are you glad? I don't know what I feel about this study. I think that it's good that we know this now. And as I move forward, I know I'm working at a deficit. But what do I do? Skip lunches? Just like you said?
No.
What am I going to do?
Yeah.
And I saw that, there's a company out there that's, we can get more of that into people post significant weight loss. What am I going to do? Pop pills for that? And I don't know.
Yeah. Well, just to make sure that we've got clarity on the leptin issue first, and then I'll answer your question about what do you do. So the leptin was in the tank right after the show. Once again, the scientists expect that as a person regains weight, that leptin levels would increase. They did increase, however, only to about 50% of what was expected. So let me tell you what that's like. That's like you stop doing something extreme and you try to go moderate. You try to go moderate with exercise, let your body heal. You try to go moderate with eating. But your hormone that says you're full and satisfied, you have a little deficit of it. You don't have enough. So like you were saying, you never feel full. You never feel satisfied. And so even if you try to tune into your body, say you were to try to go from Biggest Loser to intuitive eating, which would never happen, but just say that's what you tried, your body would be sending the signal, please give me more food. That's the whole point, is that the body is fighting back. The weight loss in this show, I'm sorry, but it's vanity. It's not health. It's vanity. It's appearance. And it's the worst kind because they hijack health. They hijack health and well-being and say, oh, that's what this is. And yes, it's extreme. And this is the other thing that's really ticking me off is, and this is coming out of my own group. Certain dietitians, health at every size, are getting it right. Therapists are getting it right. But there's a big group of, they might call themselves weight management experts, which if you actually don't even use that term. You use weight concerns. But where they're like, oh, well, this is why extreme dieting is wrong. And, I even had colleagues who privately messaged me over Facebook and said, basically, I see you're getting your panties in a tizzy over this. I want to make sure you read the journal article where they concluded that it's not so bad, basically. And I was like, no, I did read the journal. But what do you define as success? Because if the researchers are honestly calling this success,
calling that feeling of being ravenous and that you can't be satisfied because your biology has been altered, how is that remotely successful? And when they compare it to other diet programs, first of all, I'll note that the lead researcher, Kevin Hall, even says that, and this is NIH, they did a literature review. I have literature of weight cycling on my own computer. I'll put some in the show notes. But they did a literature review, and he even said similar metabolic results were seen in lower intensity types of studies. And then there's a researcher who was quoted who's not involved in the study who said their experience shows the body will fight back for years. And that, said Dr. Michael Schwartz, an obesity and diabetes researcher who is a professor of medicine at University of Washington, is new and important. So he's calling this new and important. But if you're a real obesity researcher and you actually look at that data, you will see weight cycling. It's there. It's just like you said in the beginning, society doesn't want to hear it. We can't accept the fact that dieting is worse for your body than taking care of it.
No, I mean, and I'm not going to argue on that last point with you specifically, Rebecca. I'm going back to the whole societal thing. I mean, if big was in, people would be fighting to get big. That's just that's the kind of world that we're in. Again, I almost feel like I'm not contributing as much as I want to be, just because I think that we should just be literally duking this out, and not duking out, but exploring it, unpacking it, literally on a stage somewhere in front of a group of people that I literally just am floored by this. And I know you're looking for more from me, Rebecca, but I still am trying to think, okay, what long-term effect is this going to continue to have on me? How can I now readjust how I work out, how I eat, how my whole idea of health looks? And at the same time, how do we make sure that we realize and get the message out to our listeners that living healthy is what's important. Moving your body is important. Eating more nutritiously in a way to fuel your body in a good way is important. Part of me, here we go. This is where I'm going to take it from. Part of me did see the study myself. There you go. That's what happened, because I know how hard I had worked, and I know that it was creeping on, and I know that I was feeling horrible to a certain extent about myself and about the weight creeping back on, but I was feeling very capable and strong. So to all those listeners that we have out there, I don't want them to walk away reading the study or hearing our podcast. And I know they're not going to get it from our podcast, but the study and thinking, okay, well, why even start, or why try, or maybe I shouldn't be moving my body or working as intensely. And let me backtrack there. What I mean is, if you find true enjoyment from challenging yourself, from working out, from walking, doing whatever type of exercise you enjoy, continue doing that. If you are living life at a larger weight, but you feel healthy and you know that you're living life to the fullest, keep doing that. I think that one of my initial concerns, again, was people are going to read this and just throw their hands up and be like, oh, whatever.
Well, let me try to help. I'm going to start helping by quoting Dr. Deborah Guard, who is well known in Health at Every Size. And I'll be sure to share the article that she was quoted in the show notes, as well as some ways to get in touch with her. But she's Dr. Deborah Guard, a California psychologist and eating disorder specialist who has often spoken out against discrimination toward overweight individuals. Strongly disagrees I should be before. So Dr. Joseph, I'm going to mess up his name. Dr. Joseph Proieto, I'm sorry, from Melbourne, Australia, if I messed up your name, believes there needs to be a dedicated effort to find countermeasures against our body's urges to maintain weight. So this guy wants us to dedicate ourselves to forcing our body into a certain weight that is deemed healthy. And he said we desperately need agents that will suppress hunger and that are safe with long-term use. So this guy wants us to fight our body's natural need for food. Biological hunger and a need for nourishment that's just biology. That's not an eating disorder. That's not emotional eating. It's hunger. There's a difference. So That just makes no sense. Anyway, then Deb comes in. Dr. Deborah Guard, a California psychologist and eating disorder specialist who has often spoken out against discrimination toward overweight individuals, strongly disagrees, however. There is a tremendous reluctance to engage with the data and its implications, she told Medical Daily. People are still talking about, quote, solutions, like medications to eliminate hunger or massive therapeutic teams for life. And I think clinicians do not want to disappoint higher weight people who are desperate to change their weight. We have to grapple with the facts here and open our minds to what we can do to support the well-being of people at every weight. Okay, so that's your answer. We need to support well-being first, true health first, physical and mental. And the fact of the matter is, you can be healthy and unhealthy at a wide variety of sizes. And your questions are like, well, you don't want people to misinterpret it. You're trying to figure out your own interpretation. You know, maybe part of you is happy because there's an answer, but also kind of pissed off. Like maybe you feel cheated. I don't know. You're not really talking about it. That's fine. But it's like, you can't go back to the past. You chose to be on the show. You were on the show. Whatever you did to your body, you did. How you can learn to reconcile that and have gratitude for those experiences. I would try to get to that just for a better place of well-being. But you control every other choice you make. Every minute, every day, you're in charge. And you've made progress even since we started this podcast.
You know, because at a certain point after you go through this and you don't see the scale continue to drop post-experience on the show, you see it increase, there is a point where you kind of feel like you failed and you kind of stop here and there. You have these little start and stop moments that don't contribute in any way to lifelong health.
Right. Well, it's a lot to unpack and you should definitely take your time. This is what I want you to know. This study does not impact body kindness in any way. This study could have never come out and body kindness would still be there. What you were doing, the road that you're starting to walk down would still be there. So body kindness, 3 pillars: love, connection, caring. These are guides for how we make choices. You talked about taking action. You talked about journaling. That's great. It's about finding a structure that feels good to you. And I just think body kindness is that structure that can work for a lot of people. It comes from all these things that have helped me and things that practitioners use and that have been, intuitive eating is a validated method. I mean, it comes from the place of wanting to be good to yourself.
We've had so many conversations off air, Rebecca and I, about just how I felt and what I was battling with, and both the positive and the negative, because Rebecca will be the first to tell you that I'm in a lot of ways a defender of the show, or have been a defender of the show as much as I've been a critic of the show. And it's interesting because I know Rebecca has been such an advocate for me personally, and I know for contestants that have come off the show in the work that she does, the approach that she takes. And that's why I was decided to be part of the Body Kindness podcast, was because I truly feel good about the decisions that I make when they're done on the side of kindness. And that's the truth. And that's why I'm here and I'm advocating that people really start with kindness and let that expand out into the decisions that you make. I also want our listeners to think about, and this is something I'm going to be thinking about as well. Why do they? Why? Because I can guarantee that there's a couple of us out there, and I'm not judging. I'm just putting it out there because I was, and sometimes I'm still on this side as well. Is it so that we can look better, so that we can be skinnier, so that we can fit into those certain clothes, wow people around us? I just want to urge our listeners to be kind to themselves and start with wowing themselves first. Our listeners, and myself included, I'm talking to myself, people, getting healthy. What do we really mean by that? Because I can honestly say there are times, even today, where I say, yes, I want to be healthy. And in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, and look super good again, or whatever. But, now I have a little girl, Rebecca, and I think to myself, it has shifted. I want to get healthy because I want to be around for a long time. And if my ass, a 34 gene, great. And if it doesn't, and I'm feeling great and healthy and capable and able to just hold my little girl and play with her in a size 38, then that's what I'm going to do. But I'm not going to lie to myself and be okay at a higher weight if I'm not feeling healthy. And that's what I want our listeners to walk away with.
Okay. Well, I think that's a interesting perspective. It's really important to check in with your values and what matters to you more, and I would just gently put you in this direction of what happens if you don't try to control your weight at all and you just focus on your habits. And has that ever been a possibility?
Yeah, no, I mean, absolutely. And again, the conversations that we have, whether, throughout this entire podcast, have been working on just that. So again, I feel like this is, man, of all the years that we could have chosen to do a podcast, we choose this one. Like, I honestly, part of me, I keep going back and forth. I was mad at this study a bit because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm doing great. Like, I'm feeling good. Like, I'm not worried about how many steps I'm getting or how many calories I'm burning. It's about the quality of the walk with my dog. I mean, we're doing some good stuff here. And I could honestly just take so much pride in that. And then the study comes out and I'm like, oh, you bastards. Like, and I didn't even know who to say bastards to because I keep reading and, trying to figure all this out. But yes, absolutely. To answer your question, that's the approach that I'm looking to take. And I'm going to choose to feel empowered and so make peace.
Good.
Yeah.
And we're back. First, just a little housekeeping note. I want to make sure that if you would like to get access to this research study and the New York Times article, those are going to be in the show notes. So be sure to check those out if it helps in following along, or if you're seeing something that you want to be able to share with anyone, then you'll have access to those pieces. But Bernie, I just would love to kind of reconnect with you. And just kind of get in that sense of, so you're someone who you were on the show, you followed the rules of the show so much to the point that you were literally a winner because you won the at-home prize. And that is somebody who was kicked off the show, but then lost the most weight at home, like percentage of body, whatever, right? And you literally were like a runner-up. So like highly celebrated for your weight loss, and then had several years, I think, of your body fighting against you and you were regaining weight.
Absolutely. I mean, following the show, I really did my best to maintain that workout regimen. I mean, for the following 2 or 3 years. And I was eating extremely quote unquote healthy, which I now know is just very restrictive. And I was still finding my body fighting to get back to where it wanted to be, where its version of healthy was. And at the time I saw myself as just losing the battle, not understanding why I wasn't able to maintain what I had done on the show, just feeling super ashamed of myself, knowing that I was really overdoing it. Like there was a point where I just realized, you know what, I cannot, if this is healthy, I don't want to be healthy. And then you shared this study, and we had, like you said, we didn't talk about it. I didn't know anything about it. These were, I believe this was a study done on season 8 contestants. Or
no, season 6, right
season
after
6.
you.
Okay,
because
season 6.
it was they followed them for 6 years.
Oh yeah, like Danny Cahill, Heba. Okay, wow. So this man did, see.
Well,
man,
and Danny was a feature in the New York Times piece because basically with his metabolic adaptation, which essentially is the outside of human control, no matter how hard you fight it, the brain has a mechanism called homeostatic drive to eat that pushes you to think about food, and to go after food, to try to increase your calorie intake. So you have that. But you also have a metabolic adaptation. So the idea is that as you lose weight, your metabolism does slow down. Well, that makes sense because if you weigh less, it takes less energy to keep you alive. But with metabolic adaptation, even as weight is restored, right? So the brain is trying to get the body back to its set point and out of a starvation mode. The metabolism should restore proportionately as if you never dieted, right? Like it just kind of back to normal. But with the adaptation, it doesn't restore proportionately. So with Danny Cahill in particular, when he was studied, he had to eat somewhere in the order of 500 calories a day less than before he even started on the show, just to maintain what he had fully regained.
I think it was almost 800. It was almost 800 calories.
I remember,
less.
Because I remember it was
500 for everybody else.
Okay.
I mean, he was on the extreme higher end of needing to quote unquote lower his calorie intake.
Right. And for listeners, for even at his higher weight, that's like skipping a meal. Like I remember saying it's like skipping lunch. So it's like missing a meal every day for the rest of your life.
And still moving your body as intensely as someone who weighs the exact same, who had not gone through what we went through.
Yeah. And Bernie, so I just, as if that's not kind of clear enough, since we kind of started to go down that road, I really want listeners to know and maybe hear some more detail from you. Basically, you had to work like really, really hard in order to try to maintain the initial weight loss that you experienced. So over what window were you pursuing weight loss between being on the show, being at home, and the finale? Like how long was that? Do you remember?
How long was the actual show to finale is what you're asking?
Yeah, day one to finale.
Okay, so 5.5 months.
Okay.
5 months and 3 weeks.
Okay.
And I lost 130 pounds.
Okay. And then it was like trying to integrate things in your regular life, but it's like you also had to work and you had a partner, like you had things to do in real life.
Yeah, and I say it like this, because the truth is my life was still consumed by what I was putting in my body and what I was taking out of my body in the form of exercise and movement, because I didn't move my body for enjoyment. I didn't even really move my body for health. Looking back at it now, I moved my body to maintain a look. And that was very, very difficult. It was burdensome emotionally, definitely physically, mentally. All my workouts were at that. You could have stuck a camera in any gym that I was at because that's how intense my workouts were. I didn't believe in recovery days, although if a trainer told me to take that, I was like, yeah, sure. And then I'd be out for a 5-mile run the day I was supposed to be recovering. So it was really hard. It was really unrealistic. And what happened as a result of the years afterwards was that I just stopped one day. It was almost like Forrest Gump. I just stopped running. Like I just stopped. I stopped everything. I hated moving my body in that, because I thought that's the way I had to. And I noticed, and, I stopped because I saw the weight creeping back up. And remember, I just shared that I was moving my body to maintain that. So now that wasn't even happening. So it was a really dark place.
Would you say you were obsessed?
Yes, absolutely. I was obsessed with this perception of what I needed to be for everybody else. I felt like if I regained the weight, then not only was I letting down myself, which actually I wasn't too concerned about. It was I had squandered this opportunity that other people would have killed to have had. And if I run across the people that I quote unquote had a moment with and shared my experience with and was a cheerleader for, they were going to think I was a hypocrite. What if I'm given another opportunity to go back on the show and hopefully motivate, new contestants or a new group of people? There was that, because I want to be very clear with the listeners. Like, even though I deeply care about people in general. And if I was able to share my story at that time, I thought that by sharing that story, I was going to be helping people. And that's what I wanted to do. I now realize that that's not what I was doing. I was perpetuating some really bad stuff as far as weight loss and that, but I didn't see it as that at the time. So to me, it was my opportunity to continue to share hopefully something good with people.
Mm-hmm.
So I just, and that's a big part of who I am and who I was as a person. So when all that started slowly getting stripped away from me, I just stopped, and I felt so ashamed, so ashamed. And I didn't realize what my body was doing biologically.
Right. Well, one problem with that is seeing and holding up the weight loss as that's something good. And that's not your fault. Again, it's a cultural condition. But it's very noble and honorable to want to be a helper, to want to help people change their lives or see something differently, or to be an inspiration, to leave the world a better, like, these are all very important. It's part of what makes us human. It's just that what your belief said was, I've earned this worthiness and this spot of adoration from weight loss. And the only way I am ever going to be helpful to other people
to stay that way.
Is to stay that way. And nobody can live like that.
No.
You were defining it as obsessed. I'm curious, how much of your waking hours did you spend obsessing about weight loss, your body, food, or movement?
A good 90% of the time, because if it was, me waking up in the morning, getting in the shower, there's that quick glance in the mirror. It's trying on or putting on your clothes. To me, it always felt like I was trying them on. Are they fitting the same? Are they tight? Do they still look good? Then it was, okay, let me get to the gym. Okay, what are you eating? Like, everything kind of revolved around my outer appearance and keeping thin. I wouldn't even say that it was being healthy. I was doing some really great things initially. So there was a period of the time, and when I say great things, okay, let me make sure I'm being very clear. I was doing things with my body that I'd never done before, and that was fun and exciting to see how my body was able to jump higher or do this or do that. I can remember getting like genuine joy from that. And then I there was a point soon after where it was like, okay, you already did that. That's not good enough. That's no longer enjoyable. And the joy started lessening as I continued to do things.
Well, if you spend 90% of your waking hours thinking about those things in an obsessive way, nobody's going to have fun doing that.
No, absolutely. And then there came a point where I was pushing my body so much that I wasn't able to see significant increases in my ability to do this or my ability to do that. So then that started becoming saddening to me. Mm-hmm. It was just a really dark cycle of not appreciating any stage of where I was. Mm-hmm. And that was really sad to me now that I look back. Right. And it wasn't because it was all just sad.
Right.
Because.
And you were overtraining to the point of injury?
Yeah. I feel it now. At the time, it was more like, you're sore, work through it. But my body definitely tells me now that I had pushed my body in ways that long term are now having some effects on my knees and my back. Mm-hmm. So yeah, the biggest thing with this study too, Rebecca, and I just want to kind of bring it back to the study, is it caught me off guard. You shared it. I didn't know what to say when we were discussing it at the time. And now that I've lived with it for several years, one thing that I really feel that I've gained from looking at this study and sitting with it for a while is that it helped me to take away the shame that I felt. I think initially on our first discussion of it, I talked about, well, I don't want this to stop me from continuing moving my body and doing healthy things. And I kind of went on in that vein for a while. I don't see that. My thing is, now that I've sat with it, it allowed me to realize that there were biological effects, negative biological effects that happened as a result of the show. Mm-hmm. And I've learned to forgive myself, be kinder to myself, not live with the shame, go out of my house and not feel like a loser, no pun intended.
So to be clear, if I understand your story correctly, right? Because I'm tracking this to what the outcomes of the study were, because it sounds like what they found in season 6 is replicable in at least your experience of your season. But so to be really clear about it, you were continuing high levels of excessive exercise, obsessed with getting enough intense exercise, obsessed. We didn't talk in detail about food yet, and I want to hear more about that, but like obsessed with every morsel of food that passed your mouth. You spent 90% of your waking hours thinking about it. And even when you did that, you were experiencing increases in your weight.
Yes. And they weren't drastic at first because I was on it, quote unquote, on it. When I say that, listeners, please know that what I mean by on it right now is excessive,
You
too
were being
much,
the good
not
boy,
good.
following the rules.
I was quote unquote on it. Yes, and I was still experiencing, a pound here, 2 pounds there. And to me, at the time, that was like, oh my God, it was agonizing torture to know that how can you be gaining weight? And, so then the next workout was that more intense. And the next meal was that less caloric. And and then the negative self-talk was that much louder.
What kind of things did you say to yourself?
Like, just literally like, WTF, like, what are you doing? Like, obviously you're not tracking your food well enough. Obviously, you half-assed the push-ups at the end of that workout.
Bully.
Total bully. I didn't understand why it was happening. And then it got to a point where I just quit. I was done.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I happen to think that's very life-saving.
I won't disagree with that. It was.
Yeah.
I mean, at that point, I remember even running like my second or third marathon and not really training the way I should have trained.
Oh, was that a second Chicago that because I remember we did one. I trained and you did not.
No,
okay.
I didn't. I believe it or not, I trained even more for that one that I felt like I didn't train for as much as I didn't train for the third one. So it was probably the third one.
Yeah.
And I remember I did the 26.2 in a time. I don't even know what the hell the time was. All I know is I should not have finished.
Yeah.
And I pushed myself to the finish line. And it wasn't a good push yourself to the finish line, guys. This wasn't like you trained, you were responsible in how you're taking care of your body, and you came over a mental barrier and achieved something noteworthy. It was, damn well you couldn't walk for the next 3 months afterwards. Like my knees hurt so bad. And that's not how you should feel after a race. My first marathon, I felt extremely great afterwards. I mean, I couldn't walk for like 3 months and I still feel like I have pain as a result of that. Yeah, this study really released in me a whole roller coaster of emotions. I don't feel, and Rebecca, you ready to get into it with me? I don't feel that the creators of the show at the time knew how negative of an effect this show would have on people. I do feel that they found out a hell of a lot sooner than it was ever released to the public.
Really?
And of course, they were going to keep. That's just my personal opinion. I mean, no,
well,
I have
because
nothing to
the person,
substantiate that.
well, because it was like Dr. Huizenga. Is that how you say his name?
So here's the thing.
He's a collaborator, right?
Yeah. Yes and no.
Okay.
I want to be very clear. I am about Dr. Huizenga. Dr. Huizenga was and still is an advocate for contestants and past contestants. He always had our well-being as much as he could, fighting the powers that be at the forefront of his mind. I remember him specifically telling me on this show, do not continue to move your body right now. It needs to repair itself. And he would say things like, I don't care what your trainers tell you. I'm a doctor. Do not move your body. So what did I do? I moved my body. No, I mean, so as far as Huizenga goes, No, I can
Yeah.
honestly say that he was and full disclosure,
Yeah.
I've worked with him since
Mhm.
the end of the show,
Mhm.
and that was incredible in the fact that I just realized how amazing of a doctor he was.
Well, he's trained in the weight normative paradigm. All of medicine is rooted in weight stigma.
But he's the only one. He's literally fronted his own money. I'm surprised that his name wasn't associated with this because
No, that's what I'm telling you. It was. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Dr. Huizenga was a collaborator with NIH on this study.
See, I don't know why he didn't call me then.
Because it was only for season 6. It was for season 6 only. So you had to be a season 6 contestant. And they were followed for 6 years. So when you talk about, you were saying something about you think that the show knew. I don't even know what you were saying. Were you saying you think the show
what I'm
knew?
saying is like the actual producers do. I don't feel like, I mean, obviously, so 6
years. Do you
years.
think anybody cared? I mean,
no. That's what I'm getting at. Okay. So at first, I do feel that the show's creators came out and listen, the creator of a show isn't going to think to themselves, you know, gosh, I wonder what long-term effects this is going to have on its contestants.
No, I wonder how much money I can make on this.
Or even more than that. Let's take the money out for a second. Okay. Maybe, first of all, you know, it was a creator thinking to himself, well, hey, this is an area that America obviously is struggling with, that America will be interested in seeing, and will probably save a few people throughout the process if this show actually goes to air. Then all of a sudden it catches fire, right? And it becomes this monster of a show. And let's say season 8, 9, 10, they start finding out, hey, all of our past contestants are actually gaining weight back. You stop doing these check-in visits with them. It was things like that. I don't think that they had the actual numbers or the study. That's not what I'm saying. But damn it, you have to be pretty blind to not see that damn near 90% of your past contestants have put this weight back on.
Yeah, they were blaming individuals. It's your fault. You were weak. You didn't have what it takes.
Or my favorite was, why didn't you call us? We would have helped you. Bull.
Oh, did they say that?
There were a couple times where they're like, hey, listen, if you would have just reached out, you know, it's like, yeah, yes.
So more blame and shame is what that's all about.
Yeah. So what are we going to do? We're going to go ahead and we're going to call you up and say, hey, we've gotten fat again. All the things that you called horrible. Can you help me out again? And it's like, okay, yeah, we'll help you out, but we're also going to put it on TV again.
That's what I was going to say. How can I make more money? That's how you know, I mean, in everything, follow the money. I mean, it's commercialism, whatever, capitalism. But let's do another show and we'll, that's how we'll help you.
I do feel that at the beginning, they had no clue that this was going to turn out the way it did.
Yeah.
And then, of course, obviously, they had to have seen what the effects were, but they're not going to stop it at that point until the very last season when somebody darn near killed themselves. And I'm just talking, I'm saying this based on what I saw on TV, guys, strictly as a viewer. I don't even know what her name was, but somebody turned out to be extremely skinny. I mean, I don't want to say skinny. She was malnourished and very frail looking. I don't know what the medical records say about her.
But I think any contestant who was on the show was actually malnourished because of what you do.
I'm not going to argue that.
And that's what I think is a BS. So it's Rachel Fredrickson was her name. And that is what, talking about grinding my gears, it's like you take Jillian Michaels, who's made all this money, right? And I remember when I was like, I can't with her anymore. And it was an interview in some magazine, a Q&A. And they're like, the question was like, tell us what's first word comes to mind when you see someone's, like a woman's 6-pack abs. And the word was dedicated. And I'm just like, see that whole thing as like, that just disgusts me because in my experience, I've seen so much suffering with anything from 6-pack abs or on the pursuits along the way to try to achieve that. Is it, if that is how you prove your dedication in the world. And then when they basically have had season upon season of giving to Rachel what they gave every contestant. And then they looked and acted disgusted. And what they said was like, no, that's not right. She did something wrong, right? Never self-examining and questioning, maybe what we're offering here is unhelpful. And so it's all a piece of crap. Sorry.
Well, at the end of the day, at the end of the day, the show was just that, a show. And it's taken me all these years to be able to say that and mean it.
Mm-hmm.
It was a game show. And what Rachel did was win that show.
Mm-hmm.
And she played that game too well. And all of a sudden it scared people. And then we're going to worry about her health.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel Fredrickson won the show.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't say that lightly, and I'm definitely not saying to promote what she did. But if it is a show, which it was, she played it and she won it, just like you would Survivor or any other thing. But what she did show was how dangerous this game could be.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the type of message that we were sharing with society, which to me, in hindsight and now, is just so sad, that I contributed to that dialogue and to that way of thinking for so many Americans. And that's why I think that, even more than Americans, I get messages from people in other countries. That's why I'm here. And that's why I've worked so much with myself to get to a healthier place. And that's why I feel it's so important to speak with not only our listeners, but anybody who will listen about what real health means, and the harms that could come from extreme dieting, if that's what you even want to call it.
Mm-hmm. I was just Googling her name, and she's got a Facebook page, but the most recent post was from June 2016.
Of course, we all disappear. We're all musicians. We all disappear.
There's some she did for Diet Bet. Who knows what exactly when that was.
Yeah, but here's the thing. I mean, we all disappear. You guys, you're going to find a couple of the past contestants that are still in the spotlight. And they are people who, I don't know their story. I don't want to speak about them. But they definitely have a body that reflects more closer to what they look like at the end of the show. Those are the 1 to 2 to 3 people that you'll still find posting here and there. I don't know anything about their journey, how they're doing, how they're maintaining, if they're maintaining. I don't know anything about their true health. So I don't want to speak negatively towards them. And I definitely don't want to promote them either. I don't know anything about them.
Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you. Anyway, so about this study. But this is the bottom line. When I think of what could be the most helpful for listeners now in hearing this conversation, is that hopefully nothing of what we have said in this reflection sounds appealing, normal, healthy, or good at all. And if that is where you're at, then congratulations. You don't want to diet again, ever, 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 ever. And now the hard part comes. Right? Because it's practicing body kindness and being good to yourself, and a lot of acceptance. And what I'll say to that is, and including the Biggest Loser contestants, right? Or these people, we always other higher weight people and say, oh, but for them, weight loss must be good. For them, it has to be good. The issue is, what are you going to do to somebody's body? If you're going to do Biggest Loser style stuff or Whole30 or keto or, these things that are not sustainable. If you're telling a person the only way that they can hold on to their lower weight is through obsession and overthinking their food and body and really harming themselves and harming their life, well, then you are the problem, because your definition of health is the problem.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I especially when you said, and I want to revisit this one last time,
right?
If what you heard in this summary of this podcast in some way interested you, that's not good and good. Do you get what I'm saying? I was trying to express just how broken I felt as a result of being on the show in the years following. And how disordered I was while on the show without knowing it.
Do you think the show broke you?
No. I paused just because I really wanted to give it some thought. I don't feel the show broke me. I feel that allowing and not knowing, first of all, not knowing how much of an effect society's view on fat people was, how negative that was playing into my life, not realizing that I was feeding into it, not learning and not knowing how to appreciate myself, not knowing how to love my body, and then trying to maintain this image of what was socially acceptable broke me. Not living for everybody but myself broke me. Living for everybody else's definition of what I should look like, act like, move like broke me. And you don't have to be overweight to fall prey to a lot of that type of feelings. And, you know, I don't know if it's come with age. I know that it's definitely come as a result of our work together, but I am more comfortable in my body no matter what size it chooses to be. And I have made peace with myself more than I ever have before. Am I fully there? No. Absolutely. There are thoughts that creep back in my head. You know, even describing the rigorous workouts, I would be a complete liar if I said I didn't view some of that like, wow, remember the things you used to do? But when I say that, I also snap back and realize that, yeah, but do you remember what you did to your body to even try to do that? And how unnatural that was. So there's these constant conversations that happen. So when you say, did the show break me? No, I think that I allowed myself to break trying to live up to something that really wasn't healthy or attainable for my body type and for who I was.
Well, and I do think that for whatever reason that made you stop completely, to see that as
I was exhausted.
And it's truly life-saving. Like, your brain was trying to get you to rest because you needed the rest. And I mean, we didn't really get to talk much about what you did with food, but I assume that you just sort of were over like the grilled chicken breasts and steamed broccoli, just like you had to kind of let yourself eat normally again, and probably flexibly and without rules. But
well, no. So when I stopped, right, when I just stopped and I just collapsed, I don't mean literally, but mentally and emotionally, I went over on the quote unquote deep end. You know, like I was eating more than my body wanted to put in, because I figured if I was going to go down, you know, I was going to go down in a big way. I wanted, you know what? I wanted to be able to tell people, yeah, I freaking stopped. Yeah. Damn right I did. Yeah. And I did. I mean, it's almost like I just wanted to do it in a big way. I wanted to have a reason, Rebecca. I didn't know what the reason was. I didn't know there was this biologically I was fighting something. I was like, you know what? Darn it. If I'm going to lose this battle, I'm going to lose it because I'm going to lose it.
Right. Well, let me ask you this. Would you identify any of your eating as like overeating or binge eating, like getting kind of uncomfortably full?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So this is an important note. I mean, I understand and appreciate 100%, right? If you think of the mindset of this is the narrow window we're going to give you of what success looks like, and anything outside of that is a complete failure. And so you're like, fine, if I'm going to accept failure, I'm just going to set myself completely free, right? Like, it makes sense that that's the cognition. As a result of hearing this study and hopefully our work together, what you also realize is that binge eating is always preceded by restriction first. So you had what do you say, 5 months of the show? 5 or 6 months?
Yeah, about 6,
right.
5.5, 6 months of the show.
How long did you try to hold? 2 to 3
years afterwards.
2 to 3 years of white knuckling it? Like,
absolutely.
I mean, Rebecca, can you imagine that?
Yeah, and you know this. Like I have the evidence, like 3 years of just really, and thank goodness, and I'm being honest, thank goodness I didn't battle an eating disorder. I wasn't bulimic. I was eating. I wasn't anorexic. Damn near close, but I erred more on the side of making sure you're getting the exact amount of calories in. So I didn't dip below that and I didn't go above it. And I can't say that other people were as lucky, and that's unfortunate because we didn't know what was going on. So yeah, I maintained, and I say that again in quotes, for a good 2 to 3 years afterwards. And it was, no, closer to 3. It was 3. And then I remember just being like, I am so over this. I am so done. And then I didn't want to move my body at all, even though I had found enjoyment in aspects of it. I didn't want to look at anything that was quote unquote on the healthy list of foods to choose from. I didn't listen to my body when it said that it was full or even satisfied. So not even just satisfied, but full. I didn't even listen to it then. I wasn't sleeping properly. Just a bunch of things that I know weren't healthy, where if I would have just sought out maybe some professional help or had a better understanding of what true health was, I probably would have, I know I would have been better off with the returning to my natural weight. It would have been so much better.
Yeah. But, in the idea of post-traumatic growth, I definitely think that your experience of being on the show was a trauma in your life. And I think that the lived experience is so valuable. So I think everything that you have been through is a piece of information that helps to reinforce your full commitment to body kindness, knowing that life is better and that, like you keep saying over and again, I like myself now. I really think that you, as a result of what you've been through, you are able to be in this place where you can literally say, I'm never going to diet again. And, when you have these thoughts about that sort of fantasizing about the intensity of exercise, just keep working on the reframes for that. Like I'm somebody who I do like, intense workouts too. And I also know that there are certain things I just don't have the time for. There are certain times where it's not a good time. And that if I get a thought of like, oh, I really miss doing yoga that I don't really make time for, or, I really, like, remember when you could go out and run 10 miles and it was like NBD, it's like, you can take these things and say, there was both good and bad in that. And this is where my life is right now. And even kind of say, is there something I could do that would help give me more of the good in that? Because you don't have to never like intense exercise.
Absolutely. And here's where I'm at now so that we're very clear.
Yeah.
My intensity at this point in my life looks different. And I'm good with that. Absolutely. I mean, I am older, that's, I that's first and foremost. Like, again, I always go back to this, listeners, and you know this. Being a parent has allowed me to look at my body in a different way, so, some of those movements aren't necessarily age appropriate, for what and that I would apply that to where my daughter's at and now to where I'm at. So I am kinder to myself. And I don't live with the shame. And because I don't live with the shame and because I like myself more, the way that I define health is by truly connecting with my body, caring for my body, being honest in what I'm feeling, also setting goals that are realistic, goals that are nurturing, goals that are kind. I'm good with those. I'm good with the progress that I have now without pushing it in ways that I know are going to cause harm to my body.
That's awesome. That's so awesome. Any other sort of final words? I think we pretty much we're doing doubleheader shows.
Here we are. Yeah. If I had anything to say to our listeners is that you are good enough where you're at, and there's always room for you to find ways to care for yourself more so and to explore that. I think that far too many people, because we're just inundated with fat phobic type talk and rhetoric, and so much so that it seeps into our own self-talk. And, I just encourage our listeners to do the things that they find joy in. And if that involves moving your body in healthy ways, exploring new foods, that's a good thing. And just loving and trusting yourself more. I don't know. I still obviously am grappling with the study, but I know that I've benefited from understanding biologically what's happened to me.
Yeah. And just make choices that feel like self-care, because I guess that is, you really can't go back and have not have had any damage from the show. And I just think that, like, how does it help listeners and everything? So many people feel alone. Like, they feel like they're the problem. I failed. And I think that through your story and this research, it just supports all the other body of evidence and just what we know rationally to be true, which is that diets, no matter how you paint them, even the diet in disguises that swear they're not a diet, they're a lifestyle change, all that, if it's centering your life is going to be better when you lose weight, it's not scientifically true. It doesn't mean that you won't have a lived experience of some type of weight loss. What it means is that for the vast majority of people, 85% of people who diet lose the weight and then regain it, and sometimes they gain even more. And what it means is that there's diversity in that experience. So two people can do the same exact thing. Someone's going to lose some amount of weight and keep it off. On average, it's more like 3 to 5%, but you should know that that 3 to 5% does come with health benefits. It's just that you're not going to free yourself from weight stigma. If you practice body kindness and you happen to lose some weight, it's not likely to be extreme, but that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. I have heard from some people, but to know that that's very highly individual, and to know that even as your body, you notice things that are better about your life, and you're noticing body changes, no matter what they are and what direction, know that weight stigma is always the problem. And the way the society sees higher weight people is always the problem. And we've got to address and fix that bigotry if we really care about improving people's health and well-being.
I couldn't agree more. Again, thank you for this opportunity to revisit the study. Listeners, thank you for sticking with us. I wish you guys all the health and love in the world. And I say that because I know it's helped me to change my life and the way I view myself.
And that's our show. The podcast is made possible with support from listeners. Please donate to help offset production costs at gofundme.com/bodykindness. And please rate and review the show when you have a moment. It really matters. Let's keep the conversations going on Facebook. Search Body Kindness and request to join the group for Body Kindness readers and listeners. Have a question for us to answer on a future episode? Visit bodykindnessbook.com/question. Body Kindness books and audiobooks are available wherever books are sold. To request a signed print copy, visit bodykindnessbook.com/order. For other questions about this podcast, please email info@bodykindnessbook.com.